Attention Tucson! We bring you every minute of Arizona men's basketball, both home and away, all season long. We are the home of the Arizona Wildcats. This is Wildcats Radio 1290. KCUE Tucson, a Cumulus media station. The Wildcats Radio 1290 studios are brought to you by Casino del Sol, Soul Sports, Bet Easy, Win Big, Bet Local. Arizona men's basketball plays here. This is Wildcats Radio 1290.
W-I-L-D, Cats. W-I-L-D, Wildcats. W-I-L-D, Cats. We're wild about the Cats.
When Craig McMillan is in the game, he makes the offense flow.
I'm gonna find the open man and get the ball down low.
And Cook himself, he plays the game like only Seth can do. Give me the ball and stand back and watch me jam for two. Elliott's here, it's time to play. They want me in the NBA. When Tolbert plays, he plays to win. I put it up and it goes in. Give Kerr the ball, give Kerr a hand. I'll drill it in from three-point land. Ask the Gumbies, ask the refs.
We don't do drugs 'cause we're the best. W-I-L-D, Cats.
Wildcats Radio 1290, JW Madden and David Ahumada. David, that's a song that came out when I was in junior high school here in Tucson. As I mentioned, I was lucky enough, my dad was a member of the faculty at the U of A, and we were lucky enough to have season tickets. So I was at all those games. I remember specifically my first sports memory is the moment of silence for Steve Kerr's father. Mm-hmm. I would have been about 10 or 11 at the time. Oh, no, I would have been about 12 at the time. Point being, I remember that, but my first sports memory was following this particular team. That team was the first Arizona Wildcats men's basketball team to go to the Final Four in 1987-88. They started the year in Alaska with a couple of big wins over Michigan and Illinois, the Great Alaska Shootout. I think I remember that correctly. I know Michigan was involved. That just jump-started their first ever number one ranking. They went on to a 35-3 record, 17-1 in the Pac. Gary Payton led Oregon State that year, finished second in the Pac-12 with a 6-loss team, 12-6. So they won the Pac that year by 5, dominating team. David, I'm not sure how much familiarity you have with that 87-88 team, but probably the most famous group of alumni to ever come through the athletic department. Everybody knows about Steve Kerr. Sean Elliott, best player who's ever played basketball at the University of Arizona, finished his career with 2,555 points, good enough for first at the time in the conference. Don McClain later passed him. Boo. We don't like Don McClain. Well, I mean, I like Don McClain now because he's come in and he laughs it off that he was booed so much as a player. But I booed him very, very, very enthusiastically when he was with the Bruins. Anthony Cook, best shot blocker Arizona's ever had. No disrespect to Lauren Woods and others. Anthony Cook was a monster. Tom Tolbert became a bit of a infamous radio personality up in the Bay Area after his time with the Golden State Warriors. Craig McMillan, first McDonald's All-American that Lou Olson ever had, that Arizona ever had. Off the bench, they had Kenny Lofton, Judd Bushler, Harvey Mason, Joe Turner, Matt Muehlbach, Craig Bergman, and Bruce Frazier. Currently, you might notice him on the sidelines for the Warriors games. He's the one with the salt and pepper beard. He's been there with the staff since 2014 when Steve Kerr took over. That team was defined by their bench, David, and their bench were called the Gumbies. Yesterday, my sister-in-law sent us a bit of a care package, and within it were 2 dog toys, and they were both Gumbies. And I don't even know if she knows the affiliation, but I told my significant other that I needed to bring a Gumby into work because my handle online for social media has been Gumby Squad for the longest time. I was always very attached to that idea, and what that idea is supporting your teammates and having as much joy when they succeed as when you yourself succeed is the whole concept behind that Gumbies theme. If people out there are too young to understand what I'm talking about, the bench for that 87-88 team, they dubbed themselves the Gumbies, and it was led by Bruce Frazier and Craig Bergman, who was a former quarterback. They, along with Sean Rooks, who was a red shirt on that team as well, Matt Muehlbach was always heavily involved, Harvey Mason. They would make a spectacle of themselves on the sideline by cheering on Arizona after not a great individual play, but after a series of passes led to an amazing team basket. And it was really the most team first, pass up a good shot to get a great shot. And it's interesting, David, looking at the landscape of Arizona basketball currently and what Coach Tommy Lloyd has brought here really harkens me back to that time. It feels as if everybody, both last year and this year, really are excited for each other's success. And to me, the best teams of all time I've ever seen in college basketball are those ones that share in that love for each other, that really like hyping each other up and seeing each other succeed. And I just wanted to touch a little bit about that team to those who maybe don't remember or weren't around for it. What have you heard, David, about the Gumbies over the years?
Now, it's funny you mention it because my dad was on campus at the time when the Gumbies and, Kerr and the rest of that crew got their number one overall ranking. And he remembers the time on campus being absolutely wild. He remembers just thinking that it was probably the most excited that the campus had ever been at the time. Probably the only time that it was more excited for him, at least on campus, was when the Mets eventually won the '86 World Series,
Sure.
which was around the same time. But needless to say, I mean, this is the team that, like you said, this is the team that put the University of Arizona men's basketball program on the map. And for all the talent that it has, from the starters to the bench, you got guys that really kind of made it impact in every facet of the game.
Sure.
And even to a point where guys like Kenny Lofton, who did not go on to play big league basketball, he still went on to the big league. We're talking a high-end athlete in Kenny Lofton.
Six-time All-Star.
Yes.
Finished his career 16th all-time in stolen bases, for those who don't know. The backup point guard on that Arizona men's basketball team, Kenny Lofton, he never played baseball at the U of A. He didn't take a single at-bat at the U of A. When his career was over in baseball, he had played, obviously, in high school. He was the fastest player end-to-end I've ever seen. Kenny Lofton, from baseline to baseline, he was actually he had some ups, man. That guy had a couple of nice back reverse double pump dunks when he was in college as well. 622 stolen bases, good for 16th all-time in Major League Baseball history. That's what I meant about the fame of this team. Harvey Mason, music producer, obviously his father was a very famous musician as well. So there's just, and it goes on and on and on. Everybody knows Matt Muehlbach. Everybody knows, what he's done with both his postgraduate degrees and what he's done with the sideline, and obviously all of his basketball commentary that he's done. Always love listening to Mr. Muehlbach when he talks about basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Up and down the list. It's funny you mentioned individual greatness. Steve Kerr, no disrespect to Salim or any of the other great shooters. Steve Kerr was by far the best shooter I've ever seen in college. I remember before the three-point line, he used to shoot from 25, 30 feet out because nobody would guard him, and he could just make them. He consistently made them. Those Steve Kerr chants everybody knows about from McHale, they started before, David, the three-point line existed in college basketball. We're talking 84, 85, 86. Sean Elliott, best individual one-on-one player I've ever seen. So the funny thing about that team is they had the best shooter, the best individual one-on-one. I'm going to do whatever I want to you. You better bring a double because you can't stop me. Oh, yeah. Sean Elliott. And yet it was really their team style that they were known for. They were really known for a high energy, everybody getting involved and everybody always looking for the open man. And I feel like that in modern basketball holds true more than ever because defense have gotten so advanced. Defenses really scout your tendencies. They try to take away if they have the personnel to do it. Look at what happened during that Houston game last year. Really tough physical teams. And the only way to get around that is not by individual excellence. It's by trusting in your teammates and somebody's open, right? So if you're seeing doubles, if you're seeing some kind of pinching in on ball handlers, it's just about making the right pass and the right read. And a team that sets themselves up for that by looking for each other the whole season will have tremendous amounts of success moving forward in the postseason because you can't take one guy away. There's not a Shaq on that team, as we talked about the other day when he was taken away in McHale. There's really nobody you key in on. And so watching the growth of Kylan Boswell off the bench, the more aggressiveness of everybody really overall, but mostly Courtney Ramey and Cedric Henderson these last three or four games, to combine with Tabellis and Umar Ballo's dominance on the inside, clearly those bigs, 10 assists between the two of them, David, in the last game. Everybody on this team really enjoys finding each other. And I feel like it reminds me when I got this Gumby in the mail last night. I knew I had to come in today and talk a little bit about the Gumbies because there's a lot of similarities with Coach Tommy Lloyd and his style of basketball that he's brought to Tucson.
Oh yeah, and again, you talked about the Gumby squad and how the bench would get very animated over making all the extra passes and wanting to find that next guy that was open. And it's like, oh, did you see that great elbow pass or bounce pass? You have to be excited about the little things because the little things lead to something big. And this team consistently finds the little things that they can do that will lead to something greater. And, I mean, we talked about this, and I mentioned it with the bigs that are great at passing, but the guards have also stepped up in that. Cedric Henderson was tied for second on offensive rebounding. If you can do little things like that, and you give your team another opportunity to have a possession, take more time off the clock, get somebody where they can get a good, clean look and add to your lead, that plays dividends. If you can see and be excited for guys giving effort, then you can be even more excited because your team is going to benefit from it. And every single time you hear about what these guys talk about so what'd you think about when Ramey hit his big three-point shot? Kirk Kriisa said it after the Washington game. I was happy for him. I was excited that, his shots went down and he hit them, but I'm more excited for him that, he's having the confidence to take those shots.
Yeah.
I'm more excited that he's wanting to be involved. And that's what you need from your teammates. You want them to want to be involved.
Yeah.
If they can find that motivation to be a part of the system, it ends up making everybody else going to be better off.
Well, I think, unfortunately, in the modern era we live in, there's a lot of me, and how many likes and how many shares I individually am I getting, and less about the group. And I think that it's team sports. Clearly, you're not going to come to play basketball without without understanding that it's really about sharing and about team, because it's not tennis, it's not golf, that type of thing. However, there are always people out there who are trying to get their own stock up in the eyes of the NBA scouts, and they're always trying to get their own name out there and their Q rating and all those things. I feel like in the end, again, I don't know Coach Tommy Lloyd personally. I don't know where his head's at, but it feels like the direction that a lot of the recruits more recently and potentially in the future, the direction they're going is those one and done guys, David, who are just trying to get their own personal Q rating up. I don't think that's the living room that Coach Lloyd's going to be looking to get into. I think it's the team first. I'm willing to sacrifice my own stats. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help the team win. The guy who epitomizes that as the person we haven't mentioned from that team was Judd Bushler. Now, Judd Bushler, if you don't know, sat on the bench behind Sean Elliott for several years, as one would, because Sean Elliott was really, really, really good. That year, Judd Bushler off the bench averaged 4 points a game and was always a very good all-around player, good rebounder, very good passer for a small forward. When he was a senior, he was all-conference, went on to be a 3-time NBA champion, played, I believe, 10 years. Now he's an assistant coach with the Knicks. Now, the lesson here is transfer portal is out there. Maybe you're not getting the minutes. Maybe you're not seeing the stats that you want. Look at a guy now. Again, this is a long time ago, David. Right. So it's hard to make parallels because it's a much different landscape for college sports. However, if you look at a guy like Judd Bushler, who in that era and under Coach Olson's system, guys sat on the bench and learned until they were ready to contribute and earned the trust of the coaching staff. Judd Bushler was just behind an all-conference guy who he couldn't get in the game behind. He waited his time. He waited until, it was his turn, quote unquote. And Judd was an unbelievable leader as a senior and went on to great success, obviously playing with those Michael Jordan-led teams with the Bulls and onto 3 titles. That idea of it's not always going to come right away. However, if you buy into helping the team, helping the program, helping to make sure that whatever you do, if it's just being positive. Kelvin Yifan, when he was on campus at the U of A, also played behind some very good guards, Damon and Jason Terry specifically. He always talks about how he won the most motivational award 2 years in a row. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that idea of whatever it takes, even if you're not in the game, even if you're not able to impact the actual outcome on the court, buying into actually just being here to help the program be successful, that attitude, if that's your first and foremost thought on your mind, then welcome to the Wildcat family, because that's the kind of player I believe personally that Coach Lloyd is looking to bring into the program.
A great example of that is a guy that's no longer with the team this season, but didn't make it to the NBA. He is not playing at any professional level at the state side. But Justin Kier, how important was he to this team last season? When Kirk Kriisa was struggling with injury, you needed a guy who was going to be consistent and valuable and knew how to play the game of basketball. Justin Kier absolutely filled in that particular role. And it's those moments. It's those guys. And back to what you were saying about, maybe Tommy Lloyd isn't getting in the living room for the one-and-done guys. These are not who he's looking for. You know what? It's a lot better to go into a kid's living room and say, I'm not going to help you be a top 5 overall pick in the NBA. That's just not what our system's about. I'm not going to be able to make you into a top 5 pick because you're not going to get the ball 80% of the time. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to show you what it takes to play team basketball. I'm going to show you what it means to be a team player and how you can fit in. And because of that, I'm going to give you an opportunity to at least have a 10-year safe and consistent and very, very positive professional career, wherever that may happen to be.
Yeah, I think we got another guy on this team you could look at in Umar Ballo in that last year. Umar only got spot minutes really behind Christian Coloco.
Yes.
But I bet you, David, I wasn't there for the practices, but I bet you Umar Ballo went as hard as he could against Christian Coloco in every practice over the summer and through the course of the season because his job was to prepare Coloco, CeeLo, for those moments where he could shine. And when you have a situation where there's multiple players at a position, Kylan Boswell is not going to get a ton of minutes over Kerr Kriisa because Kerr is established. He's been the point guard for a time. And honestly, despite what a lot of fans might say, I want Kerr Kriisa out there shooting.
Yes.
Kylan Boswell obviously has been very impressive in his time, but he knows enough that he's not going to come in and get 30 minutes off the bench. Ballo last year sat behind Christian Coloco. He sat behind a lot of guys when he was up in Gonzaga. And look at him now. He's just blossomed under the tutelage of the coaching staff here. He waited his turn. He got a little bit into better shape, worked on his footwork, and right now, Umar Ballo is probably the most dominant big in the country under the basket. And so just right there is less than enough. I think a lot of people look for a really quick they want to have their cake and eat it right away. And I think a lot of times patience is hard to come by in modern times. And yet, if you look across the landscape of sports, especially in college basketball, that patience and that idea of if your attitude is there first and foremost to help the team and the program, beyond your individual things will come. Because this program is really all about the team, all about moving forward as the group.
Absolutely. It's been that way since the first time this team was ranked number 1 in the country. You go back to the Gumby squad, like you showed. And if you can go ahead and build a team, then you go ahead and have a lot of a longer chance to be a dominant program in the world of college basketball.
Yeah, it's hard to game plan against a group. It's easier to game plan against an individual.
You can stop one guy. It's hard to stop. I know that it's a football terminology, but you can go back to George Allen when he was coaching the Washington over the hill gang, saying 48 men together can't lose. If you can get 7, 8, 9 guys, however deep your bench happens to be, if you can get 9 people to play together, they can't lose.
Yeah.
You can beat one person, but everyone together, it's hard to beat.
To answer the question all the listeners out there are asking themselves right now, yes, there is a music video for this song. So if you go to YouTube and check it out, 1987-88 in all its glory. JW Madden and David Ahumada here on Wildcats Radio 1290. We will return, talk a little bit more about that Oregon game coming up on Thursday, revenge game for the Wildcats. David Ahumada and JW Madden, Wildcats Radio 1290.
Cats. Wild about the cats.